This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Greenway Committee, March 23rd, 2023, Thursday, 7 p.m. I think that's it. We have a quorum. We're missing one committee member, but we're nearly complete. So I have an agenda here. If everyone would like an agenda, you don't have to have one. You feel free to make marks, whatever you need to do. I have the meetings from Doric, kind of unofficial. We could review them. I could go through them individually, or we could just review questions. Is there an official way that I should review minutes for a past meeting?
People should have a moment to review them, and there's a quick vote.
I think we should have to wait.
I think we should wait.
Yeah, wait till they're drafted.
Okay.
We can all look at them.
Okay.
Our next meeting, maybe.
Okay.
Aaron, sorry, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
There is one person here whom I've not met, who probably hasn't met me.
Oh, okay.
David? Mike Bueller.
So should we want to introduce everyone for also community members?
Should we introduce ourselves maybe?
Sure.
I don't know if we actually all know each other. So I'm Aaron Tauscher. I'm the chair. As of late 2019, I think I joined the committee. Maybe became the chair shortly after. I think that's it.
Okay. I'm Dan Rukakowski. I'm a committee member. I think I've been on the committee as long as Doric has, which has been a while.
All true.
And I'm Janet Brown. Tonight I'm secretary.
There we go.
Just a member.
Mike Bueller. I've been on the committee as long as Dan and Doric have, with a little interregnum.
I'm Ellen Stanghas, and I've been on the committee since last fall,
You're here for some.
last year.
Doric Dodds, apparently I've been on the committee quite a long time. I'm just gauged by the other fellows here.
Well, I'm David DeRozier, and I have not been on the committee for a very long time. It's less than a year, maybe 6 months.
Mark Cass has been on the committee for about a year now.
Cheryl Fletcher, I live on Gun Road at the dairy farm. I know most of you.
My name is Craig Delapenna. I'm the outsider. I'm from Florence.
Okay.
And I got my start here in 1996 when I watched the trail voted down.
Ugly time.
I remember that.
And I came back in 10 years later to resurrect the project as the Greenway. And I'll tell you, when it's my turn to talk a little bit, I'll tell you what's going on right now up to the minute in the world of rails to trails.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll definitely make time. So that's a good segue. We have a Greenway charge here. This came about recently from the select board because apparently a charge never existed. So the select board wanted to develop it for a purpose, a direction, communicating with the select board, and identifying terms of members. I think a handful of members started with the plan to stay on the project until completion. I think they want to shorten that, or at least have fresh active names whenever possible, and just make sure that everyone is interested in the focus of the project and reporting to the select board accordingly. I have a copy of it here. I also shared it with everyone electronically, I believe, but I figured if anyone needed a copy, we could look at it and bring questions up. Otherwise, feel free to send questions over at any point, but you should have a copy in some form. I may ask at some point soon for specifics on start dates if they're remembered. I don't know how, for someone who's been on the committee for years, I don't know how the select board will want to handle if it's 3 years from a certain date to revisit reappointments or something like that. So we will see, more to come. But like I said, if there's questions, feel free to let us know. The other thing I have on the agenda is the finance update. I just wanted to confirm that a grant application recently went in. Big thanks to Mark and Ellen. Lots of work on funding requests through the Mass Trails grant as well as the CPC request. So the Mass Trails grant was for $320,000. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. We probably will not hear feedback on that until summer, maybe late summer.
May typically.
May, oh, okay, so earlier than I thought.
Funds to be released for July 1st.
Okay, so iffy on that because we did receive Mass Trails funding in 2022. I don't know if we should hold our breath or not. It would be extremely helpful, so we will see.
This is the budget that was submitted, if that's helpful.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I only need 5 copies.
And then related, there was a match that we approached CPC for, and Mark spoke to the CPC committee just a few weeks back, maybe 2-3 weeks back, and that was for $65,000. This is all for design and permitting expenses. The committee approved it. Next, it goes to town meeting. So I think similar to just a few years back, if it passes, I don't know if it's by majority, simple majority at town meeting, that means that allotment would also come from community preservation funds. So all of this would be extremely helpful. And then I had a bullet point for the state of our funding. The way I see it is $500,000 from Mass Trails has already been awarded. That's a single $100,000 award. Last year, a $400,000 award. And then an additional $100,000 of CPC funds has been awarded. So if we're estimating an $800,000 cost, we're still a couple $100,000 short, $200,000 roughly. That's a very general $800,000 estimate, of course. So the grant funds would help, CPC funds would help. We're nearly there, but we're not completely there.
Can I update that a little bit?
Absolutely, feel free.
So we had applied for grant for last year for Mass Trails for $300,000 initially, and then they opened up additional funding for, and we applied for another $200,000. We only got $300,000. There was confusion about how that works. We've gotten $100,000 for acquisition of the rail corridor, and then we've gotten $300,000 in our 2022 Mass Trails grant with a $100,000 match. The current belief is that the $300,000 will be able to be effectively used during the grant cycle ending in June, and the town part of it can be stretched out a little bit, but the $300,000 from the state has to be used before the end of June 2023. So then someone made a copy, I think, and made an additional copy. We expect this is actually going to be a 3-year planning process, thanks to people who really know what they're doing rather than my being creative. The people at High and Bond have come up with a work plan, and it's really hard to see. So this is a 2023 component of that work plan, which is more readable. That's the part that's in the grant. So, so what we're hoping for is to get this 320 with $80,000 match for this year, and then we expect a small amount for the following year to allow High and Bond to finish the work, which then may allow us to get the construction money in 2025 or later, if all goes well. So that's what we're hoping for. Just a clarification of the budget. So we asked for 320. They require a 20% matching grant. We've asked for 65,000 of the 80,000, which is the town match from CPC, and approximately $15,000 is in-kind services, which is our time as volunteers, Ed's time, the highway department time. So just so people understand what went into that, and that's in the budget there.
And this is related, but now being in contact with Alex.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Could I just pose a quick question to Mark?
Absolutely.
Did the folks at CPC have any trenchant questions or concerns that we should be aware of?
They brought up the legal stuff that doesn't involve us, and they wanted a little more understanding about the timeline part of it, and we went over that.
But
am I correct on that?
Was the vote unanimously?
It was unanimous.
Okay.
I think it came from open space funds, if it matters, CPC. And it actually went through quickly after the one before us. It took a long time to discuss.
I was thinking we got off pretty easy given all the questions on a different project, so it didn't seem to be causing much hesitation.
Great, thanks.
And then I was going to add, as far as billing goes, and feel free to speak to this if you know better than I do, but so I reached out to Alex, the project manager at Time Bond, about trying to ensure that we don't lose money based on slow billing, or trying to have invoices processed so that we can use grant funds before their upcoming deadlines. There's more to come on that, I guess. He's not totally sure, and I'm imagining that there's specific pieces of the engineering work that will need to be identified or itemized before we can bill. But it sounds like he's aware of it and has spoken with Ed along the process just to figure it out. But as long as they're well aware that we don't want to give up awarded grant funds, that's maybe the best we can do right now, but I don't have more specifics, unfortunately.
And a lot of the work being done now, between now and July, is going to be survey work, if I understand.
Survey, delineation, and then essentially getting a base plan together, which will be a lot of the heavy lifting. Also, I think culvert assessments, the bridge assessments. I know there were some preliminary things done early, but they're going to have to flesh those out further. So there's quite a bit to be done.
It's just for new members, there is a feasibility study that's online for the town and has all the details. There's a structural engineering study that was done by Time Bond, and an environmental study done 2017 approximately that we can get to if you need it.
Dan, is it your impression that they're going to be able to at least submit the bills in a timely manner?
Yeah, I think so. They do a lot of work with state contracts, so they understand how that works. Even Lyman Pond here in or Sheldon's, the dam removal, that was all funded through a state program. So that was also subject to contracts ending June 31st. So I think they have a pretty good handle on how to maximize that.
Okay, good.
Do we have I know we've discussed this offline, does the committee now have a point person with Alex?
I think that's on the agenda for tonight.
Oh, okay.
I think.
That could lead us into our next topic, actually. So work with Alex Fagnan and Time Bond. I have exchanged a couple emails, and I think, have I copied you in? Maybe I failed to copy you in.
I knew you were contacting me.
Okay. So that is on me. So then if you would like to be the point person, the primary contact between the committee and Alex, I'm perfectly fine with it. My goal was just to figure out exactly where we are in the early engineering process, what's coming up next, and then just asking general questions about billing. So that's essentially what I've gotten from him.
So I think that we should have one person from the committee be a point person to make it fair to Time Bond and the lead person, and also to then communicate back to everyone here and make sure communication gets to community members. I'm willing to be that, but if someone else wants to be, I have some background with, at least wetlands permitting stuff from work. The people who have real expertise are not appropriate to do this job. There's conflict of interest, but I'm willing if no one else wants to do it.
Okay.
All for it.
I think it might take a motion. Do we all agree on that? So if someone could make a motion, say we want Mark to be the point person.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
That works for me.
I'll word it.
All right. So I'll also
We have to
make the communication.
It's been moved. We didn't actually vote on the.
I'm sorry.
We didn't actually vote on the motion, did we?
No, we didn't. So can we vote and everybody agreed and all that? Aye.
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 Okay. You're it.
Congratulations.
One more thing on your to-do list.
I will add you to the communication, and then you can run with that. So what I have, I actually included in the italicized text below. So that's actually directly from Alex, which I thought was pretty helpful. The reason why I thought it was helpful is partially my ignorance. So we did receive schedule here from DOT, which has the it looks like a Microsoft project timeline. Pretty helpful just to get us started, and you can see early in 23 some of these activities are starting. things like geotechnical design or environmental, some of these things that I obviously cannot articulate exactly what they are. I didn't know until recently that there was actually surveying work and, boots on the ground and things like that. Hence why I was reaching out to, trying to find contact information for abutters, things like that. So after figuring out that surveying work and hands-on work was beginning, and then additional delineation work, I think, being planned for when snow melts and the weather is a little bit more agreeable, we may actually see more active work being completed. So good news, and it seems like there was almost no delay in the changeover between reaching out to Time Bond and seeing work ready to go.
Is this, I'm confused. This says Mass DOT, not Time Bond.
That they put that together to meet the Mass DOT requirements.
So this is from Time Bond?
This is at least an early version from Time Bond. This is the piece that covers the 12 months of the 2020 grant and includes almost everything in the other. And I only included that because it's readable. Such small text.
It's a little bit easier to read.
Yeah. But it's the middle portion of that bigger one.
Yeah, it's done in DOT format because essentially it's going to be designed to DOT standards because it has to be.
I kind of got the impression there was maybe DOT restrictions too. Like, for example, Time Bond could perhaps move more quickly, but to meet the requirements set by DOT, the time frame is maybe per some of their
I
needs.
think their construction funding time frame is in a certain year, so.
Oh, okay.
It's also to meet permitting requirements, they have to do a whole bunch of precursor work before you can start permitting, is that correct?
Yeah, well, you really can't permit a project until you have the design largely complete, at least 75% complete, so you know your footprint of impacts. So that, the permitting hinges upon getting that design together and knowing exactly where your impacts are going to be.
So just a reminder for people that haven't been involved with this, we're required to do a 25% plan that's written up, reviewed by the town and by the state, approved, changes made, and then develop a 75% plan. There's town meetings required after each of those phases, so that just takes time.
So it would be, I don't know if you can do this or if we need to have Alex, and it would help me at least. I mean, this is not my field of expertise, to put it mildly. It would help me to actually be able to have someone, whether it's you or Alex or someone else from Time Bond, come in and present and actually walk us through this process. Just speaking for myself, I have no idea what we've signed up for here. No idea what our accountabilities as a committee are. No idea what the deliverables are and where they go. Whether they go to us or to Ed or the select board. So it would be helpful, I think, to have someone come and walk us through what to expect in this process.
Future meetings.
It did sound like Alex would be flexible with that, which maybe leads to the bottom paragraph that's also in italics. I was kind of asking about addressing the public more so than just addressing the committee to fully understand the impact of the initial plan. But that's where his comments say, of course, it is an important part of the process. Maybe more information needs to be generated before holding a large-scale meeting for residents, abutters, things like that, to ask open questions, because there's, I think, a lot more to figure out before a lot of the answers can be provided. At least that's maybe the impression I was getting. But it sounds like he might make time to either come, address what he knows or has learned at this point, or up to a certain point, and then talk about when maybe public interest meetings would be a good idea.
And I can talk with him and communicate that part of it back about timing for public meetings.
Yeah, and more broadly, really, just to understand the steps of this process. I mean, I can read, a timeline, I guess, as well as anyone else, but not what each of these individual steps and gateways mean, and what our responsibility is in all this.
Right.
Really have no clue. I mean, when do we start seeing pieces of paper, that we need to understand and review? It's a little elusive to me right now.
The first phases of any project is really data acquisition. So there's going to be a pretty long period of the survey, the delineation. If they need to do geotech, they're looking at the bridges. That's all like gathering the data together so that you can develop an existing conditions plan. once you have a decent existing conditions plan, then you can start designing what your improvements are going to be. So a lot of what's in that are the steps involved in getting that data and then turning it into a design.
And existing conditions could take at least 5 months or something.
Yeah, the existing conditions is really your foundation. You know, you got to have a solid foundation. You know, there's a saying that goes, garbage in equals garbage out. So you really have to get the data and get it right. And then you can build your design on that in accordance with, you know, Mass DOT specifications and what they're going to want to do with the bridges. And, you know, obviously they can't use, or they likely can't use the superstructure of the bridges, but they can use the abutments. And perhaps, maybe they can. You know, that's the whole part of the data acquisition and assessment phase.
This is partially related, but I did want financing. I think part of what we're asking Ty and Bond to do, or Ed has asked them to do, is to recollect information about what they expect for total construction costs, because the original approval of a TIP approval, which is Transportation Improvement Program priorities, was for about $6.1 million. The expectation is that's no longer an accurate number. And so that they've been asked to relook at that, and so we can.
I know that in the past few years, the cost for labor and the cost for materials has gone up exponentially. And you know, some opinions of probable costs that were completed 3-4 years ago, when it goes out to bid, the numbers are coming back so much higher, just because everything's gotten more expensive. So that's very possible that you know, they'll have to do that exercise and see what the actual cost is going to be, because we see it everywhere. Costs have gone up everywhere, especially labor and materials. So we need a recession.
And I heard that the rails and the ties are going to have to be taken out. Who is going to do that, and when is that going to hold us up? When is that going to be done? Because the railroad's going to do that.
No, I don't think the railroad's going to touch it.
I thought they wanted the rails.
Not anymore.
I don't think so.
That was one of the big exchanges that took place. The state basically rustled up a bunch of rail to quiet down the railroad company. The railroad company had been wanting to hang on to the then valuable steel, and they insisted on being the ones to remove it, which might or might not work to our advantage. Probably not, because they would just leave the ties behind, and that's hazardous waste. The state pretty much stepped in and said, oh, we can help you all out. And they came up with just bucket loads of rail from somewhere, salvaged, that was satisfactory to the railroad. And it was delivered to the railroad shockingly early, but there you have it. So now, to the very best of my awareness, they've got no interest or claim on all that stuff that's in the ground now.
So they do have to be removed, right?
We have to remove it, yeah. And with any luck, we might yet extract some value, but I don't know what the value is these days.
Yeah.
I imagine that'll be a part of the construction contract. Whoever is hired to actually build the project will be responsible for removing the rails, and perhaps there's, you know, scrap value which can come back to the town and come off the price for that. I've certainly seen that in other projects, demolition projects and things like that, where the contractor will take ownership of the scrap material, but it's reflected in their cost.
Maybe have a big bonfire with all the ties.
I don't know about that. Yeah, create another Ohio.
I would imagine for guesstimating costs, or getting to a place where you could guesstimate costs, you'd have to do a good amount of data acquisition for addressing how good or bad the bridges might be, surface prep. I mean, is that a ways off, or is that easier?
It's still a ways off.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But they're, you know, engineers use published data and tables and rules of thumb for, you know, hours of labor. You know, they break it down in a whole bunch of different ways where you can get a ballpark.
Okay. And then is it around a similar amount of time, or is it easier to come up with enough data to field questions from residents and abutters as the project comes along?
I think the question should probably come once the data is in place and they're ready to actually do the design.
Okay. I understand there's a lot of interested residents. I have no idea if it's 6 months, a year, when we could actually have valuable information as far as, parking, access,
Right.
Ramps, fencing, all of the things that will be a part of different pieces at different points.
Mm-hmm.
This is why one of the reasons I would find it helpful to have Alex come in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Because it will enable us then to communicate with the town about at least the kind of the high points of the process and when certain basic things can be expected.
Agreed.
And how to communicate with the town without
Yeah.
putting our foot in their
Yeah,
mouth.
which can't happen soon enough at this point.
Can we make a
No, I
motion that
agree.
we're going to invite him to a meeting?
We can, actually, it's going to be Mark's problem.
Yeah, I will find a time that works, some
Okay.
options for him.
But he will present to us and then maybe
Yeah, I
talk
think-
about presenting to the town too?
Well, let's start by presenting
With
to
us.
us. and
Okay,
then
good
figure
idea.
out, based
Okay.
on that information.
The action I can take, I can put Mark in, and there's actually 2 Alexes. It sounds like there was someone working alongside Alex back then. So I'll make sure you have the contact information for both Alexes, put you in touch. You're welcome to ask and see what his capabilities are. I did mention tonight's meeting, he said he couldn't make it. I think I only mentioned it within the last week or 2, whenever the actual in-person invite went out. So it sounds like he's open to the idea, but couldn't make tonight. But hopefully we can draw him in sooner rather than later and get some specifics on the next steps. Any other questions or anything I have not hit for engineering related items?
So I just want to, I think what's being pointed out is that we don't have answers to a lot of questions yet, so it makes sense not to ask, anybody else if they have stuff they want to find out about.
Right.
But I'm wondering if there's a way to set it up with this, a one-way flow of information in terms of are people able to contact us, contact the committee, contact the town with questions? And I think Alex and, anyone with more experience than I or anybody else will be able to tell us, you should open this up to questions, ahead of time. We may not have the answers, but you can at least give people a place, a forum to send stuff out to us and send stuff out that, the Ty and Bond can answer questions about as we go. But I don't even know if that's a good idea. It just, I put it out there.
Perfect segue into the final point on the agenda, actually. So the existing piece to date is that we have the Greenway email address. It's always been open. We can field questions there. We can at least answer what has been done to date. I did get some questions on how the acquisition worked. What did it mean? What did it mean for residents, abutters, et cetera? But obviously anything in the future would be a guess at this point. However, I do think it's valuable to know that town residents would like to see such and such, or they're interested in this, or do or do not. Input is going to be valuable. It's a long ways off as to whether or not we can confirm. Obviously, like we said, is it going to be implemented? Is it a reality? Is it expensive, affordable, etc.? But before hosting a meeting, having an idea of what the town's priorities are is good. So we've never, as far as I know, had, well, actually, I take it back. The old Friends group had a Facebook page and then some activities. I was not a part of the committee then, but if we can bring life back to a Friends group or someone who can have more casual interactions or social media interactions or something else for discussions instead of just the public meeting format, that might give us the chance to have to collect some data in that regard.
But I did find they do still have a taxpayer ID number. And I guess that's in perpetuity, right?
Perfect.
Well, no, they still have to meet the requirement of filing with IRS each year. They had accidentally missed 1 year that I was aware of. Last year, I reported that to Jen Rober, so she would be reminded.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that she has since re-upped the thing. If you let it go unattended for a period of something like 3 or perhaps 5 years, eventually it just ceases to exist. So neglect is noticed eventually.
Okay.
Can I speak to this a little?
Absolutely.
I mean, the reason I rejoined the committee after a couple of years off was because I actually would like to help with this particular issue of communication. And I've been thinking about it a fair bit, and I guess what I would propose, at least, is a couple of things, 3 things. One is that we, as soon as possible, update there's a webpage for the Greenway Committee buried deep in the town's website, but it is our one venue right now, that we update that as soon as possible, which I'm happy to do with input from others. B, I really think it's high time to kind of reactivate the Friends. I don't think, it's a little, it's funny, I just did the conflict of interest training yesterday, and it's unclear to me how deeply any of us can be involved in the Friends, but I'm happy to, I've actually spoken to General Barish a couple of times. She's like the sole survivor from the original Friends, and I'm happy to try to kind of rope together a bunch of people to see if we can kick that off again. Not to be a guiding, I don't think it's appropriate. If I understood the training yesterday, I don't think it's appropriate for me to be deeply involved, but at least to kind of kick it off and get people going, because we're very restricted as to what we can do in communication. You know, I talked to Ed Gibson about this, like for example, can only communicate through the town website. I said, well, can we have our own website and our own Facebook page? Nope. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Friends can do whatever the heck they want,
right?
With information that we can provide them and they can use as they see fit. So, and they can also provide bodies to, show up at school events, sports events, church events, town events, and help spread the word. So, aside from updating the town webpage, I want to offer to see if I can kind of catalyze the Friends and get them rolling again. As you all know, it's a little hard these days. Everybody's a little gun shy of commitment. But I think it's really important that we try. So that's kind of my proposal, sort of my offer to the committee.
Mm-hmm. Is the person you were just talking about suggesting, is she going to be involved?
She just they came home from a vacation and found their house flooded, top to bottom.
All right, well, good.
And are living in a rental. Yeah. So she's sort of the institutional memory.
Okay.
She has the keys to the bank account and the mailbox and all that, which all still exists. And she's been generally doing the filings to stay up with the 501c3 status. Okay. But she's not going to lead the charge. Frankly, I like to have the answers beforehand, but I don't know who's going to lead the charge.
Yeah. I think years ago, Doric, you were the liaison, right? That's what we called it for the Friends group.
That's right.
That was just, the channel of communication.
And the big advantage is they can do much more thorough sharing of information, and it's going to be easy to do through the town website.
Right. They can also raise money.
Yeah.
And we can't.
Right.
So do we want to appoint a liaison?
I think Mike just volunteered.
Yeah. A liaison to a group that doesn't exist yet. So it's a very easy position.
We'll make the motion.
Yeah, I'm making a motion that we appoint Mike to be the liaison with the Friends.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I think we can also all take the action. If you hear anyone who's interested in being a friend, we do need to tell friends, it sounds like.
Right, so, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I was just rambling on that point. We got to rally the troops.
So my request to all of you, actually, is as soon as possible, please, and I'll probably ping each of you individually, please send me names and emails of anyone you think might have an interest. And I think what I'll try to start doing is just set up like a little quick organizational meeting in my house, just to see if we can kick something off and get a few volunteers, and then kind of just back off into a liaison.
But let's see how involved you can get legally. Talk to Lucy.
Yeah. Ed went as far as saying that it was okay for me to be involved in both. He didn't get into a lot of details, said he was going to look into it and never got back to me. So I believe I'm aware of the issues.
Good. Okay.
That's why I'm hoping just to kind of kick it off and then just act as a liaison. But somebody from this group is going to have to kick it off.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
It would be really great if we could have someone from the group present at the meeting that Alex comes to when he's talking about the timeline.
If there is a group.
If there is a group, yeah. Because, for me, it just seems like the sooner we have input from the community, the earlier on in the design process, the better it's going to be. You know, the more favorably it's going to be received, the happier people are going to be with the design that Ty and Bond presents, right?
At least we need to let people know why there's a delay, that they have to do the baseline stuff. I think
Yeah.
at least communicate that part of it. Because it's, in a way, too early to get the detail.
That's
input.
right.
If I'm correct, it's, they need to
Yeah.
get baseline stuff done before
Yep.
you can do that.
Is your name not there yet, David?
I'm not on here.
I've asked that a little while ago. I think we're missing you and Michael too, I'm sure. So I'll ping it again.
It's okay.
For an updated roster. But yeah, let's also, so we can invite Craig and Cheryl to obviously input, ideas, thoughts. You're welcome to
Craig's
shout.
got something to say.
I have a complete history of the original Friends of the Southampton Greenway, including the URL. I've been waiting years for this conversation to come here tonight. I have all the presentations, including the graphic designer who was involved, and she's interested in coming back.
Oh, perfect.
I'll email it to you tomorrow, Michael.
Yeah, it's funny, I was trying to figure out who, as it were, was the administrators, because there's still a URL.
Yes.
But it's entirely unclear to me, or Jen Roberge, who, as it were, owns that URL.
It's me. I resurrect projects. I resurrect every project that was voted down, including this one. And it's my hobby. I'm not old enough to golf. So I'll turn it over to a new board of directors of the Friends of the Southampton Greenway once it's ready.
Thank you.
Good
save, great.
My only comment, and the main reason for coming is because I know how difficult it's been to get information. So most of you know that we have a very large parcel that the bike path will run in front of. And so the Department of Agriculture has written to, and I don't even know if you folks have seen these letters. So this is part of the communication. I got an email today on a recent letter from Mr. Gibson to our farm in Grindstone under the APR program. And so obviously APR is very concerned and wants to be informed and updated on what's going on because they want to make sure that our land is not landlocked or that there's liability issues with if Bob's going in there to plant corn, that there's not pedestrians or if someone got hurt on the fields, what's going on. So there's lots of questions there. And the APR folks have written twice. The email that I got today was dated 3/1, and it was from Mr. Gibson to the APR group. And so there's just communication and so I spoke to Chris and said, you know, I didn't know what the meeting schedule was. And so I kept looking, and so I got a very nice email from Aaron last week, or beginning of this week, saying, and I knew you found it through our website, because I can tell when they come in. And it just said, hey, this is what's going on. And so I'd rather be informed rather than putting up roadblocks, because obviously our business is a very public business, so we want to be supportive and encouraging and don't want to, you know, we have not signed on. If you folks knew how many lawyers are after all the abutters right now. And I know it's not to you folks, it's to the government. But I think, I agree with Ellen, the sooner you get some really positive information, even to say, I don't know, but I'm listening, I think you'll get a whole lot more buy-in from the abutters, because everybody's saying, well, how come we're not being, not consulted, but, you know, no one's talking to us.
Sure.
And I know I was driving to where I work off the farm, and I was driving to work the other day, and I saw all the pink tape going up. So I called Bob and said, do you know that they're down there? And we didn't know. So it's those type, just, and some of it is probably because I just didn't know if you posted up that the surveying was started. So I think it's better to know up front to try to get buy-in. So
I found that very disturbing, actually, that and surprising that the abutters weren't informed or even asked permission from the surveyors. Like, I think I would have been upset if I suddenly found somebody wandering around on my property who hadn't asked to be there. And I understand that it's part of data gathering, but I thought, these guys are professional engineers. They must be doing these public projects all the time. The assumption is that they're going to ask. And I was really disturbed by that and thought we should be speaking directly with the people at Ty and Bond, and maybe this is something that the liaison, our liaison, Mark, I guess, whatever, can check in and make sure that they're doing, because I think it's part of being a professional surveyor that you communicate with the landowners if you're going to be walking on their land.
So related to that, is it worth the committee, in conjunction with Ty and Bond, planning on a letter to the abutters, just saying this is going on? Since we can't get the whole town, it's hard to advertise everyone. I think we can get a list of abutters, and a list is manageable mailing, assuming that Ty and Bond doesn't conflict with what they need to do.
I guess it's a matter of whose responsibility is that,
Yeah.
because I don't believe that that is ever a part of an engineering scope of services to notify abutters before surveying. If the town feels they need to do that, they can probably do that, but it's usually not a part of scope of services. Usually abutters aren't notified of a project, at least as far as, Wetlands Protection Act goes, until they're filing a permit application with the town, and then you're required to notify abutters. But until that point, I don't think there's any legal requirement to notify abutters of survey activity.
Just concretely, would the surveyors be, in their movements, are they confined to the parcel now owned by the town? Or are they actually setting foot on a butter's property?
I'm not sure if they're actually...
Typically, I know you're not.
Wetlands delineation, they're going to have to be off the property, right?
Not necessarily. They could keep it within the right-of-way. The question is where's the boundary of the right-of-way, and that's a part of the survey, is to find where the actual boundary is. So yeah, if people step off the right-of-way, they won't know it until they know where it is.
Yeah.
Why not?
Do a letter?
I watched a not so similar project go up in flames because of something like this, so it's, I'm sure, you guys all feel the same way about abutters having the right and the, work from this committee to contact them and make sure they know what's going on, but especially if there's activity happening and there's big tape going up, then yeah, I'd say sooner than later something should probably go out, because it's going to really create a lot of problems and bad blood.
Just common courtesy, yeah.
I can get the abutters list and set up the mailing. Mike, does that fit into sort of what you've already worked on?
Ask me to write a letter.
Or I'll work for you.
Yeah, but maybe we should be a little bit more, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Al.
That maybe we should be a little bit more forward about communicating. For example, I think if we put something on the town website, I don't know how many people are going to see that, but I would imagine not many. But if we put, a flyer up in the library and the grocery store and in the town hall and the board at the church and, places like that where people, school, where people will at least see that it's happening.
A letter would be great, I think.
Yeah, well, separate from that,
Two
we want to do a
different
letter to abutters for as many as we can.
Yeah.
Get.
How many, do we know how many abutters there are?
We have a list, I know, it's probably 50 or something. I'm not sure.
There were I can't remember, there were 80 some odd abutting, there were 80 some odd abutting parcels.
Yeah.
I'm sure that comes down to,
Yeah.
I don't know, 30, 40,
But it's a
50.
doable thing.
Yeah, I think we should do it.
So
I also assume there is a cost, and this shouldn't shut anything down, but if there is a cost, if we have letters available and then intend to mail them, I'm happy to approach Ed if we can get some budget to mail letters to the names tied to those parcels, unless someone's willing to to walk mailbox to mail. I don't know if there's a better way to approach it. Obviously, website, social media will have limited views depending on who's looking.
Right.
A direct to property letter with an update would be a much more direct form of communication. It's just, we've had no, at least since I've joined, we've had no cost to the committee other than just organizing.
The committee doesn't have funds.
Correct.
Right.
So that's where.
We'll get a letter out.
That's what we need friends for.
Is this something that needs the blessing of the select board or Ed, though, before
Could be.
the committee goes and starts sending letters? I think
I can,
they need to bless that.
And I'd also like to approach permission with text as well. So maybe if we start the letter, have the idea, the text of the letter, and the approach that we'd like to chase, bring that either to Ed or the select board and ask for their, if they approve and bless, then we run with that, maybe with any dollar amount we've got.
Dollar amount? Yep. I just use stamps from my office.
That could be too. If there's no dollar amount, then I won't ask questions.
Between the two of us, we probably have 50 stamps
Yeah,
we'll take care of
and
that.
some paper.
yeah.
Go to Mark's in-kind budget line.
I guess it wouldn't be a significant cost if that's in it, but
But you're right, I
obviously,
think we need to run it by the select board and that.
yeah, just another
How about
variable
Ed
in
to
the
start?
puzzle.
And you only want to notify the abutters directly adjacent to where the project will happen as opposed to the entire rail corridor, because
This is
the
tight.
project only
Right.
goes to the Sheldon's area, and then
Yeah, just for the project.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Right.
just talking about areas that might be surveyed.
if you notify the wrong people, then that could
Yeah.
create-
So maybe Town and Bond should send a letter.
Well, I'll talk with them. I think it needs to come from the town.
Yeah, you have a long list to do.
I think the town is Tyne Bond's customer, so if the town knows what Tyne Bond's doing, I think they've done their part. Is that fair?
I don't believe notifying abutters of survey is in a typical scope of service.
Mm.
Yeah,
But
it'd be
we do
a
wanna
heavy lift.
Make sure what's in the letter is consistent with what they need to do.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So you can share a letter with Alex or something else before it goes out.
Yeah.
to anybody.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to be drafting something with Mark's help.
Yeah, I'm happy to help with that also, but it has to be within the next 2 days.
Yeah, good luck. No, I think we're all agreed. I mean, in the absence of information, people are going to tell their own story. They're going to create their own story, and
Right.
it may not always be favorable. So
Yeah, it would be best to
the
get
more
into
we
that.
can start filling in the gaps, even saying, look, we're figuring this out as we go, call us with your questions, we'll
And
communicate.
the
as soon as
letter
we
going to
can.
butters can also make sure they have the email address
Yeah,
and
of
they're
course.
aware of what's on the town site. So at least they know where to look for different follow-up.
And your cell phone number.
And the, right, the contact info for the economic committee.
413-000.
That one.
The project update from March 1st is, I'm not suggesting it's a good starting point for the letter, but the project update is there. There's a little bit of nuts and bolts.
Just what, on the website?
Mhm.
Yeah. That was drafted, but the one drafted by Ed, I assume.
Yeah, that was not that I don't appreciate it, but I would have thought the committee would have agreed on text or reviewed text and then put it. And he put it up there, and that's directly from Ed. So
And that's what he sent to the state. He sent, I'm reading the email again,
Okay.
but he said, this is from Ed. He says, I am currently working on a timeline of design steps that he's going to present to the state.
This is specifically for the APR program?
No, this is from Ed Gibson, dated March 3rd, as a response from APR asking out. And he says he's working on a design plan, but he did CC the March 1st.
if you also, I don't know if you would find it helpful, but if you have text from APR or questions you specifically looked into, talked about, the Greenway email address is on the town site. I think also on My Town Government, there should be a few places to find it. If you'd like to forward it to that, or now you have my personal address, we can always revisit it and try to find more specifics if that's helpful to you or abutters.
I was going to, but I think Mr. Gibson told them that everything had to go.
That's
What
also
is the name
fine.
of the agency again? What is the acronym you use?
It's called Agricultural Preservation Restriction.
That is a program within,
The state
He doesn't
Department
know
of
what they
Agriculture.
do,
right.
They have interest in my property and on 2 farms that the bike path will.
So those are protected from development, so they want to make, and they have specific
And
requirements.
it's the land use folks,
Yeah, the
so
land.
I can, Aaron, I can certainly at least give you the names of, it's
What is the name of your farm again?
Fletcher Farm.
Fletcher Farm. Okay.
Thank you very much for coming.
And thank you. Thank
Yeah,
Bob
we really
for saying that.
appreciate it, and if there's any other suggestions that you have for us.
I completely agree that the more you communicate with the folks, because
Yeah,
it's the only way that you're.
absolutely.
Yeah, you might be able to tell we've been a little limited without electronics access. We've been told not to pursue that website, things like that, until we have a separate friends group. I think our hands have been tied a little bit, and we're kind of also learning on the fly, of course. We don't intend to steamroll through and make it less pleasant for abutters, but there's a lot we're figuring it out and need to find a way to share it openly and fairly without breaking rules. So we're on our way.
And the acquisition didn't get finalized till almost January 1st, and
Oh, no,
contracting, so
Mark, I'm not, I
it's-
don't disagree with you.
That's right, it's slower than we'd like.
I think that it's sometimes hard to get information from downstairs. And they're just saying, you know,
Mhm.
Yep.
remember this, and they told me that there's been 2 letters, so I don't know how long ago the first one went, but I think
Okay.
it was at least 6 months ago, maybe, so.
Okay. Great.
When will be my turn to talk for a few minutes?
It's okay with me.
Agenda?
That's good.
All right, so let me start here. I've been waiting for several years to come in here. Let me tell you what's going on right up to the moment, including stuff that's not been in the newspaper. During the pandemic, Mass DOT commissioned a report when things were laying low a little bit during the pandemic on the Mass Central Rail Trail. This is the Big King Rail Trail in New England, Boston to Northampton. It's all built on the west. It's all planned, designed, funded, waiting to get built in the east. The middle section, from the west side of Belchertown to I-495 at the line between Hudson and Berlin, is a little bit mysterious. They commissioned a report, and they looked at in great granular detail the exact layout, what bridges are missing, what corridors have been stolen, sold off, what the condition of the 1,000-foot tunnel forgotten by most people of the 21st century, the whole shebang. And they determined it could be reassembled. It's going to be complicated, it's going to be expensive. So they said to me, we're not doing the report that shows how much it's worth. And they said it to me because I have a 501c3 called Nawatic Network, and we reassemble dead railroad corridor and call out history on the corridor. So they encouraged me to use our 501c3 to write an RFP, request for proposals, to find a consultant that would answer the basic question. What would a 100-plus mile trail mean to the Commonwealth? A trail that intersect with at least 17 others. We put together the RFP, went out late last summer. 4 consultants, nationally known consultants, vied for the job. We raised $75,000 in 20 minutes. That's right, in 20 minutes. And if I need more, I can get more. These are the cat's meow projects. There's 5 bridges over 500 feet long missing. It's going to be very expensive. But what is it worth? This RFP we sent out was modeled after what happened in New York on the Erie Canal Greenway. When it was 3/4 built, it was producing, they discovered, it was producing $250 million. It was only 3/4 built. When that report went to then Governor Cuomo, he was so stunned, he commissioned DOT to build 400 miles in 4 years. In 2017, the order went out. They did it in the end of 2020 in 4 years. That was so stunning to the other states around here, including Massachusetts, that most of the silos inside the state agencies were taken down. One of the problems in developing trails in Massachusetts that there's no communication between state agencies. Most of the silos have been taken down. We just heard of one silo here, Department of Agriculture's APR program. Didn't know too much about your program here to develop the trail. That silo is being taken down by Monday. I will arrange that.
Well, I don't think they're opposed to it.
No, they're not opposed.
They're just
They don't know.
protecting our interests.
They don't know, that's right. They will now find out, because you're not alone. There's at least a dozen other APR landed projects in Massachusetts that are directly adjacent to rail trails. Nothing you're doing here, you're not inventing the wheel. We hired a consultant to answer this basic question, what is it going to be worth? We're 3 to 4 weeks from completion right now. There's nothing else like this in North America. This is the densest network of dead steam railroad corridor within 150 miles of where we're sitting right now. Massachusetts directly owns over 800, it might be close to 1,000 miles. They're not even really sure of dead railroad. They bought in 4 transactions inside 495. Us out here, west of 495, we have to fend for ourselves. Except for a couple of places inside 495 that were New York Central-owned dead railroads. They're now CSX. And where you paid $350,000, a light community in Natick for 2.3 miles, $6 million, because they were dealing with a dead-ender Class 1 railroad. You were dealing with friendly John Levine, waiting for you, waiting for 10 years for this to get reassembled. Patiently waiting. I used to work for that company, and he always said to me whenever he saw me, he knows what I'm doing now, he said that the biggest mistake I ever made was selling the corridor in New Hampshire on Lake Sunapee to adjacents. I'll never do that again, and I'll wait for Southampton to come together. And I said, John, I will get that town to yes. And I did. And now here we go. This report will be out in 3 to 4 weeks. It's going to show just on the Mass Central corridor and this corridor down here to the line that didn't go into Connecticut all the way, the longest interstate trail all the way to New Haven. Didn't factor in the economic impact of that, just to Southwick. And the 16 or 17 other trails in the eastern Mass. $200 million a year. 4 to 5 million users a year. Just in Worcester County, which is considered to be flyover country in Massachusetts, 960,000 visitors. There will be between upwards of 390,000 overnight visitors. There is nothing else like this. We are now holding the largest conference this year. We've got it set up, the Water Network, setting it up in Natick for October 14th. When our report comes out, probably, hopefully before May 1st. When the report comes out, we will not send it out widely. We're going to go to the governor, lieutenant governor, climate chief, and Department of Transportation head to show them the report, to give them the opportunity to write a blurb, write a accreditation for this, a couple of paragraphs, maybe a sentence or two. And then we're going to publish it all complete. We've got a PR firm on standby. We're going out to over 300 newspapers. This is big. Been waiting for this, for you guys to get the corridor. The big hole on this corridor is on the north side of Westfield. John Levine's been waiting to sell this. They're going to put the railroad on the market probably before summer. DOT, when I gave them the early numbers for this project, what this report's going to suggest, they said, what do you want us to do? I said, you want me to tell you my dream list of everything that needs to be done here? My pie in the sky, wish for it all, everything in a perfect world list? And they said, yeah. So it's 2 pages. First thing I gotta do is figure out how much it's gonna cost to replace the bridges. And there's other agencies who are still in their silos that need to be put into Trails Team. Trails Team was formed during Charlie Baker's administration. He forced 3 agencies to send mid-level or higher staffers to meet in his suite of offices, not in their little silos off around Boston. To meet in his offices where he or the lieutenant governor would pop in to make sure that they're taking down their silos. And they did, but there are still silos out there. DCR watershed protection. Nobody in this room, no one in most places knew that there was a dirty dirt train in 2018 coming from the Encore Casino out of Boston, on Boston and Maine Pan Am Railway's trackage, out to the center of the state, to turn left, to go to Worcester, to get to point south and connect, to avoid CSX all the way. Well, it derailed on the isthmus where the Wachusett Reservoir is. Came inches away from dumping a dirty dirt train, a brownfield clean out of the Encore Casino in Everett, into the drinking water for Boston. The Watershed Protection Agency for Massachusetts are cowards. They won't allow the railroad to be killed off there. It needs to be killed off. That's a big gap in our trail. The trail is currently 53 miles open, 70 miles in 2 years. The 30-ish miles left to go will be reassemblable. Part of it is watershed protection land that is still a current railroad. Part of it is, let's call them contractor railroads, and the railroad industry would call them pretend railroads, that the state owns the corridor and they're allowed contractors to run on them. It needs to be a railway trail. A railway trail through the center of Westfield, where the yard is, all the way up, not all the way, but parts would be a rail width trail all the way to Southampton. This is going to happen. The state is going to do this. The numbers here are so astounding. They, by the way, if you're interested in this subject, you can Google my name. You will see that we have an e-newsletter that goes out to between 12 and 15,000 people a month, advocates and policymakers in 8 states. And it is all about these things that you probably never heard of because the newspapers are so balkanized, you don't see what's going on. But we're doing this. This is, sure.
Can I clarify? Okay. So rail width trail means the rail is still running, but you set up a bicycle path or next to it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not a newfangled idea. It started in, the first report on that subject was done in 1998. There's over 200 such places now in the United States, including several here in the Valley. And they range the full spectrum of dead piece of junk, once a week trackage, to high-speed commuter rail, 15-minute intervals. The full spectrum of rail can be rail with trail. It's properly done. And in fact, the state has made it easy. They changed their recreational use statutes 12 years ago to make sure that railroads would buy into this by removing any liability from railroads if they allowed it. And the state encourages it. In fact, wherever they have a railroad, they usually have a rail with trail alongside of it. And the state has the right of first refusal on all railroad corridors sales, whether they're live or dead. And so there's an opportunity in Westfield to have this thing built out.
Thank you.
There's your update.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Anything else before we?
We'll put some of those numbers in the letter to the abutters.
Can I, do we want to set up a regular meeting once a month or once every 2 weeks rather than sort of ad hoc? I don't know if that's doable, but I think there's enough work. And I don't know if that works for people or not.
We could do it more frequently. The charge does request or actually require that we meet on a more frequent basis. It was either monthly or
I
bi-monthly.
think the chart says quarterly.
Oh, okay, all right, so maybe less frequently than I thought. They may have had it monthly initially, but maybe they changed that before distributing. But either way, if everyone has input or has a preference, we could make it a standing meeting. We could make it every one day of the week, third Thursday, any frequency like that, or just as available. I'm happy either way. I admit I've been maybe the least flexible. I have kids in sports in different directions, so I mean,
Does that work for you? Or?
Changed a bit, but I'll commit to whatever. If there's a group preference, I can make it.
Yeah, I would agitate for at least a monthly meeting at this point, at least. Makes sense.
And something like that, the second or third, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever.
This is-
Fit your schedule.
Pardon?
So bed and breakfast?
I have a bed and breakfast too that sits 8 feet from one of the oldest and recently built rail trails in the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon.
Hi, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Don't just talk out.
It is this one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my house.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
Yeah, I think that third Thursday worked tonight, right?
Time and date is okay. Thursday,
I thought-
7. Maybe we aim for in person here.
Conflicting with the select board, I don't know.
Location.
Well, they normally meet on Tuesday.
Because that's what I thought, okay.
Location could be tricky. I'm also okay with outdoors if the weather improves, we go to the park or somewhere else, but if the room's available, I can grab whatever works.
We're
Sound good?
flexible about location,
Yeah.
if it's
Okay.
nice weather, or even the picnic table out by the Council on Aging is legal.
Sure, bring your own lawn chair.
Does it have to be on town,
Yes.
like Conan Park,
Mhm.
something like that? Okay.
There's a listing on My Town Government that you can choose from, although I think you can be a little more flexible with what's there. I have done Conan Park once, maybe it was
Yes.
last year, but
They have the town meeting there, patient in the
Right, yeah.
summertime. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of assume you have to have the ability to have residents or interested parties able to attend if need be, rather than a private house or somewhere that's difficult to get to. So if that qualifies, that's my safe estimation. Okay, I can add that. Anything else?
So we're going to set a date for next time?
Let's see, get a calendar up actually. Can do that.
The Open Space Committee usually meets on Thursday, so I'd have to see.
So we're talking about April 20th?
Yeah, that's the third Thursday. I'm not connected to Wi-Fi here. I don't know if there's something on My Town Government already booked.
Third Thursdays, I think. Isn't it usually Friday?
Well, the next one is April 20th.
Well, I'm fine with third Thursdays. I thought.
Okay.
Through here as far as I know.
Pretty sure I'm not available April 20th.
Have you been going to Ethel? Through there tomorrow?
Yeah, I would not be available on the 20th.
Okay. I can at the very least check on location because I'm not
What about
connecting
the
to internet
27th?
at the moment.
What about the 27th, the next week?
If we move it 1 week?
That's an option too. Well, so it'd be
Better.
13th or 27th, if it's a Thursday.
27th, the fourth Thursday.
Yeah,
Oh, here we go.
Okay.
okay.
I will not be here, I'm afraid.
Well, you won't.
I will not.
Can I have
But I
one more
can,
second?
Sure, yeah.
communicate through you and
Talk about rail. What happened there exactly was the Pioneer Valley Railroad wanted to keep the rails in Southampton, and they made a deal with the state instead of having to go and pull out the rail themselves. They actually contracted with the state to You take the surplus rail on the Connecticut River line, exactly whatever the mileage here is, the state gave them the track that had already been pulled out, and they brought it to Westfield. Now, usually, the price of scrap rail is a cash positive experience. Removing the rail and then taking the ties out, the ties are a cash negative experience. So usually the price of rail is so high that even pulling the ties out allows the contractor to make money. So it depends on the price of scrap. And you do have a leg up on that project if you could keep an eye on the price of scrap steel and make a deal with the contractor to bring it to nearly to Westfield, the rail. They're 33 feet sections, every 33 feet is a rail. They fit into gondola cars. They have a contract, one of their biggest shippers is the scrapyard in Holyoke called Sullivan Steel. And they would love to have scrap delivered there and they'll pay you. So it would be a benefit if you could have the town do it, to disassemble the rail,
Sure,
with
I know, I do
DPW
that.
forces, and then pull it and stack it up and bring it by DPW trucks to Westfield to put into cars, to bring it to Sullivan Steel, they'll weigh it, and then they'll get the money. So that might be a thing to explore.
Do you know anything about the bones of the old Iron Horse Preservation?
That was a group out of Reno, Nevada, yes. I helped greenlight them just before the Great Recession to come into the region. Because, as I said, this is a very dense network of dead steam railroad. And the MBTA is the second largest owner of land in the state. And mostly what they own are dead railroads, but the rail's still in place. That company out of Reno did most of the first end work of trail development in eastern Mass until the price of scrap steel depressed and they couldn't make money at it. And I think they went bankrupt. Yeah.
And I kind of had a feeling they disappeared. They had told us that it had gotten to the point where the scrap value had declined to where they could now no longer rip up the rails for free. They could be hired to rip them up because they had the expertise, but there was going to be some cash flowing in their direction to do it. And every proposal that they had come up with at least involved bundling up the ties and getting them out to a reclaimer, which I thought was pretty good. I was quite sure the railroad wasn't going to do that for us.
No, they have a place in downtown Westfield they can transload from the truck to the flat car or the gondola cars. In Sullivan scrap steel cars that could then be brought to Sullivan Steel to be weighed to determine the value. They know the weight of the car empty. And so that it could be done.
Do you know how the ties are being transported these days? Is that part of your knowledge?
Usually the biggest one I knew of was in New Hampshire. There was 60 miles of dead corridor. The railroad took the rails out, this was years ago. They left the ties for the state or the municipalities to deal with. And 60 miles of ties was actually done by volunteers with local front end loaders or excavators to grab the ties. And then they were bringing them to landfills in Maine that liked the ties. They would shred them, literally shred them, and use them as cover for everyday's activities on a landfill. I'm not sure if that operation is still going.
Yeah, there's a lot of preservatives in that stuff.
Well, at one point, we had the
Only in New Hampshire.
we had the notion, how correct, I don't know, that the ties had to go to an authorized reclaim agency. Now, one of those was Coppers, the people that used to make creosote in large quantities.
Where were they?
Pittsburgh.
That's a long way.
Yeah, it is. And there was another outfit in Maine. Now, I can't help but wonder if it's the same
That was the
outfit.
one.
We were given to understand that all these outfits had the ability to incinerate and capture. And I have no idea what it takes to do that, but it is easy to believe there's not too many places that can.
Right, it's a hazardous waste.
Yeah, miserable stuff.
Yeah.
And smelly.
So I'm gonna let you guys go. Michael, I'm gonna give you my card. And I expect to be back in touch with you tomorrow. with a bunch of information.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Is this your poster, Craig?
Yes, all right. Thank you for all you're doing. You're not alone. There's over 200 projects within 150 miles of us here. Scores and scores of community groups are like you. You're not alone. Come to our conference in Natick. It's going to be right on the shore of Lake Contituate. At AmVets is a place in Natick. It's a veterans club. And it's right next to the newly built Contituate Rail Trail.
When is it?
Pardon? It's October 14th, it's Saturday. And if you think you had professional grade antis here, we are, in Sudbury, there's a group there that's been fighting the trail, both the north-south Bruce Freeman Trail and the east-west trail for 18 years now, 19 years. Over $500,000 they've dropped in fighting it.
Is there a particular beef that they got, for example, close proximity?
Sorry.
The same arguments you guys had.
Fair enough.
The same arguments. They lose at every opportunity.
Thanks, Greg. All right. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ready to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
All in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
8:20.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.